There is a mountain in Iran. The world now calls it by its English nickname, Pickaxe Mountain. Inside it, dug deep enough that most bunker-busting bombs may not reach it, satellite intelligence suggests, more than suggests, tells us that Iran has moved thousands of centrifuges capable of enriching uranium to weapons grade. And in Washington, for the first time in 80 years, American officials are speaking openly on the record about whether a tactical nuclear weapon should be used to destroy it. I'm not going to tell you what the Pentagon should do. I'm going to do something a rabbi is actually qualified to do. Show you how our tradition, 3,000 years of arguing about exactly this kind of question, would build the case for and the case against. Now, if you haven't heard of Pickaxe Mountain or the use of nuclear weapons, check. You will. It's happening. The debate is going on right now. Judaism never had the luxury of pretending war is simple. Maimonides, in the Laws of Kings, divides war into two categories: an obligatory war, milchemet mitzvah, fought to save Israel from an enemy already attacking, and a discretionary war, milchemet reshut, a war of choice, which requires far more restraint, far more justification. In the Mishnah Torah, Rambam distinguishes wars that are obligatory in defense of the people from wars that are undertaken by royal discretion, which carry all those additional restrictions. So the very first question our tradition would ask about Pickaxe Mountain isn't, can we win? It's not the question. It's, which kind of war is this? And honest people, including honest rabbis, disagree on the answer. That disagreement is what this segment is all about. It's not about running for office. It's not about preaching to the base. It's not about coming up with a preconceived notion. No. Because if you're honest, you're going to disagree with the answer, and there's debate. So, let's start with a pro argument. Even nuclear action against a hardened weapon site can be halachically defensible. So, according to Jewish law, using nuclear weapons on Pickaxe Mountain can be defended. There's a concept called the law of the pursuer, Din Rodef, permitting, and in some cases obligating, the use of lethal force to stop someone actively pursuing another's life, when no other lesser means will stop them. Now, in contemporary literature, we read that this idea of Rodef, of the law of the pursuer, has been expanded from an individual chasing a victim down to a regime racing toward a weapon it has openly threatened to use to destroy and to use nukes on Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the Emirates, and Israel. If a facility is understood as the last mechanical step before an existential weapon, then let's argue the law of the pursuer, because it applies to the state, not just to the individual. Now, let's turn to the Talmud. If you like, Birachot 58a and Sanhedrin 72a, and Rashi's commentary. If one comes to kill you, rise early and kill him first. Bet you never heard that before. If someone is coming to kill you, you ambush and kill them first. A principle of preemptive rather than merely reactive self-defense. This is the classical text to anchor preemptation in Jewish law. You are not required to wait until the blow lands. And odd enough, this is one of the things taught in defensive shooting. Now, 7 feet has been the distance, but no one's quite sure, it might be more than that, of someone holding a knife. If someone is 7 feet away from you and holding a knife, they will stab you before you can shoot them. So the teaching is, as someone approaches the 7-foot line holding a knife, you shoot them. You don't wait to see if they stop. You don't say halt in the name of law. That's preemptive, and that's supported in Jewish law. Now we have another concept, Pickaxe Nefesh, saving a life. Pickaxe Nefesh overrides nearly every other commandment in the Torah. And advocates of decisive preemptive strikes argue this isn't only about the person in front of you today, it's preventing a catastrophe that hasn't happened yet. Letting an enrichment program mature under a mountain, they would argue, gambles with far more lives than acting decisively now. Now, I also read that some invoke the 1981 Israeli strike on Iraq's nuclear reactor, publicly defended by the chief rabbi of the Israel Defense Forces. He used both the Rodef and Pickaxe Nefesh as a working precedent for preemptive destruction of a nuclear program before it becomes irreversible. Hey, Jewish law supports you. Jewish law is right there, pro using whatever force is necessary. And we've also found that our biggest bunker busters won't go through the granite, certainly won't go through Pickaxe Mountain. So our choice now is technical nuclear weapons. But you know, if we turn to Deuteronomy 20:19, it forbids the destruction of fruit-bearing trees even when besieging an enemy city. The Torah has a wartime restraint clause. Later authorities generalized this single wartime rule about trees into a prohibition on wasteful, disproportionate destruction of anything with lasting value. A weapon whose fallout and contamination could outlast the conflict by generation sits uneasily at best with a legal tradition that limited destruction even against a city actively under siege. Carpet bombing, out. Napalm, out. Deuteronomy forbids destruction of other property not necessary. What does the Talmud say? Sanhedrin 74a rules that if a pursuer can be stopped by wounding a limb, the defender who kills him instead is liable. Force must be scaled to what is actually necessary to stop the threat, no more. And we hear this all the time on the news. Police, law enforcement, they are instructed to use the least amount of force to stop the pursuer. An unarmed 12-year-old running at you with a Coke can, you can't waste him with your shotgun. That's not permitted. No way. However, a 20, 30-year-old tweaker, high on something, charging you with a knife or a gun, the only way you're going to stop him is to kill him. The force is commensurate. That's RODEF. Okay? Remember what I'm saying. RODEF is not a license to stop a pursuer with unlimited force. If conventional weapons, a blockade, sabotage, could neutralize the threat, escalating straight up to a nuclear weapon may itself violate the very doctrine used to justify acting at all. Now, the Rambam talks about even a besieging army leaves one side of a city open so that those who wish to flee, the frightened, the uninvolved, have some place to go. What curiously comes to mind is the siege of the Alamo. When you read some of the Diary of Santa Anna, we're told in the movies that people figure out a way to sneak out, and that's not true. Santa Anna actually left through a dry riverbed, a vadi. I forgot the Spanish word for it, but he left a way out that would look secret so that anyone that would want to leave the Alamo could. And I don't know, maybe he realized this requirement that when you siege a city, you always leave a path open for those who want to get out. A weapon that renders an area uninhabitable for years removes precisely that door. It's hard to reconcile with a legal tradition insistent, even mid-siege, on preserving an escape route for non-combatants. Pikuach nefesh is not a one-way argument. Crossing the nuclear threshold for the first time since 1945, even with a small tactical weapon, could lower that threshold for every other power watching, including ones with a lot less restraint. The lives protected today have to be weighed against the lives put at risk by every future actor who has now a precedent. 20th century writings. Rabbi David Blech, no relation, even though our name was Blech before it was changed to Bloch. I've never seen anything that I'm related to. I would be honored if I was related to him. He repeatedly, in writing on nuclear war, returns to one problem: a weapon incapable of distinguishing combatant from non-combatant sits in serious tension with halacha, just war doctrine, which is built entirely around distinguishing. Now, remember I mentioned the just war. Halacha is Jewish law. Just war is about those making the war, but not about innocent non-combatants. I'm not going to tell you which side wins, which is right, using or restraining, because inside our own tradition, the Jewish tradition, it hasn't been resolved. Rabbis who love Torah with equal seriousness land in different places on this, the same way military planners and members of Congress do. What Judaism does insist on is you're not allowed to skip the argument. You don't get to invoke Pikuach nefesh without also sitting on your responsibility of a just war. You don't get to cite the pursuer's law also without citing its limitations. The tradition forces a very hard conversation. It doesn't hand you an exemption from having the conversation. So as Washington debates a mountain in Iran, I'd ask you to do what our sources demand: hold bold arguments at once. Resist the ones on either side who make it sound simple, because it's not simple. Resist the sound bites of this group or that group. And remember, the people arguing hardest for restraint and the people arguing hardest for action are the very same people. They're both quoting the same Talmud. They're quoting the same Torah. They're quoting the same Bible. This is tough, and we have to listen to both sides. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening.